Trans women should definitely play in sports against women. You know, the number of trans people that are in sports, it's so small. So there can't be anything created specifically just for trans people. Trans people will have to go along with the crowd. And in this case, trans women would have to go along with cis women.
Tonight we're talking about the conflict that is really tearing apart the world of women's sports. Should trans athletes be allowed to compete? Now, first off, I want to say one thing. I think trans athletes should absolutely be allowed to compete. Listen, I grew up as an athlete, but for being in team sports and being able to compete, I'd have been in a lot of trouble. I'd have been lost. I don't think trans athletes should be denied the wonderful world of athletics and competition. The question is, where should they compete and who should they compete against? Now, Blossom is saying, look, there may be differences between biological men and biological women, but we're talking about transgender athletes, not male athletes competing against female athletes. Blossom, you'd give me that male athletes versus biological male athletes versus biological female athletes, of course, that's not fair, but you're saying that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about transgenders that have gone through a lot of hormonal suppression therapy, testosterone blockers, for years sometimes, a minimum of 2, according to the NCAA now, and some for much longer than that, right? And you're saying, okay, let's talk about those comparisons. And I do want to talk about those because Dr. Carol Hooven from Harvard University, she is very much supportive of the transgender population across the board. She did a meta-analysis of like 50 different studies looking at hormone suppression therapy and testosterone blockers, and the conclusion of looking at over 50 studies was that after testosterone blockers, there's only about a 5 to 10% drop in muscle mass, and that there's no evidence whatsoever that these advantages reduce to the extent that it would match a female-bodied person. And the reason is that trans women who block testosterone do not remove initial male advantages. It doesn't change wingspan. It doesn't change post-pubescent male's anatomy. And there are only slight changes. At the most, you start with a difference of about 45% across the board in lean body mass, 40% in upper muscle mass, 33% in lower body muscle mass, 83% in tendon resistance, 30% in cardiac output. And the most you're going to get is a 10% reduction, and that doesn't even almost get to a level playing field. So even with hormone therapy and testosterone blockers, particularly post-pubescent, it doesn't level the playing field at all. So what you're saying is not supported by the science. The advantages of height, wingspan, bone strength, larger heart, and greater lung volume, the only thing that seems to equate is hemoglobin. Other than that, it just simply doesn't equate.
I disagree, Dr. Phil, because again, I'm questioning for the trans people that they study, when there's only less than 10 trans athletes in the NCAA. Like, that is what I really want to know. It sounds like there's a lot of bias in this research, and I would actually like to study up on it myself and really figure out what's going on here. I think it's very dangerous to try to weaponize these statistics against trans women who are trying to play in sports, mainly because of safety concerns. And I think we got to be really clear. There is a lot more research that still needs to be done. And we also just have to be very, very careful when we talk about research like that. I think we're still light years away from really finding out the truth.
Well, I think she was very careful about this, and I think you should study her research so you could talk. I think if you look at it, I think you should look at it, and then you can talk about it and see if you find flaws in it.
Listen, being trans is not a mental illness, okay? Now, I'm somebody who had to experience gender dysphoria, but not all trans people experience gender dysphoria. There are some trans people that just transition socially, mentally, emotionally, and they may not like a physical transition, and that's okay too. They are not less trans just because they choose that route. Trans women are women. It's point blank and the simple. And I think that weaponizing it into conservative propaganda, it's a detriment to the trans community. And again, I talk so much about safety because we have to live with this. It creates a domino effect when we spew rhetoric that can become so hateful and that people propagandize against us. And so I just really want us to be really careful with the language. When we talk about mental illness, okay, there are people out there that truly suffer with mental illness. Mental illness has more to do with poor health. Gender, it has to do with poor health, excuse me. And dysphoria has more to do with an abnormality. And with trans people, their gender identity can feel like an abnormality because they are feeling like their outside body should be aligned with how they feel on the inside. And for a lot of us, being able to take hormones and being able to transition is the way for us. And again, when we talk about bone density levels, there is no actual way that you can measure somebody's bone density level and just call it research. I'm sorry, the size of somebody's lungs, heart, and other organs in their body cannot determine somebody's agility and their vitality. And so I stand 10 toes down on that. And I just think that we got to be really careful when we talk about mental illness and trans people. Trans people are not an ideology. We are real. We are here, and we're not going anywhere, even under a Trump administration. Trans women should definitely play in sports against women. You know, the number of trans people that are in sports, it's so small. So there can't be anything created specifically just for trans people. Trans people will have to go along with the crowd. And in this case, trans women would have to go along with cis women. I think it's kind of weird how trans men do not experience the same type of trauma that trans women athletes do. And I find it very interesting how trans men athletes can almost get a pass in sports versus trans women athletes. And I think that's something that we have to kind of wake up within ourselves as well, too. I think because of the political climate that we live in, trans women are faced with so much hatred for no reason. We're only 1% of the population. But because you have someone like Donald Trump in power who is using trans people to scapegoat his own issues, it's falling back on us. And it's becoming dangerous as just a trans person living in this world. And I think what needs to happen is we have to continue to allow trans women to play in sports. We have to continue to look at all of the science and the statistics. Because again, there's only less than 10 trans athletes in the NCAA. So having to make an executive order just based on that is wild to me. Leah Thomas, again, was beaten by cis women, which means that there are cis women that have a competitive edge than Leah Thomas, and it debunks that trans women have a competitive edge over cis women. And I'll leave it at that.
All right. Blossom, thank you for your time and thank you for sharing.
Man, I don't know about you guys, but I still find it absolutely ridiculous that we're even having these conversations still. Like, seriously, why are we even talking about this? This is tired. I'm tired of talking about this. I'm tired of hearing about this. It's not going to get anywhere because you have people like Blossom who fail to acknowledge basic reality, basic truths. So until they are able to understand and acknowledge just the basics of men and women, and you can't transition, this conversation will never, ever, ever, ever go anywhere. And the biggest problem with their ideology is that they actually believe that it's two things that they believe, which is very contradicting. One, they believe that trans women are women. And then two, they believe that trans women are in a different category of women. So it's never going to work out because you can't say that you're a trans woman and then also say that you're a real woman. You're either a real woman or you're trans. That's it. That's it. There's just no gray area. And when you're trans, you're still a man. You're a biological man who just appears to be a woman, who dresses like a woman. There's nothing womanly about you whatsoever. No matter how much hormone therapy that you go through, you're still a biological man. And when Blossom was talking about, well, trans men don't have this issue. Well, because trans men are smart enough to know that they're still women and that they can't go out there and compete against cis men or biological men. They will absolutely get destroyed because they're still women. They understand that, but for some reason, trans women, they believe that they're actually women. They actually are females. That's the problem here. They believe they're females after they transition. But the trans men, for some reason, they seem to be a little bit more realistic with their ideology because they don't go out and try to compete with men because they know that they're still women and they will get absolutely demolished in any sports category that they go into. So how is it that the trans men could understand that they have zero biological advantage competing against real men, but trans women believe they have the same or equal biological advantage that women have? It is idiotic. It doesn't make any sense. It's inconsistent. It is logically idiotic, period. I mean, there's no other way to describe that. It will never make sense. It's not going to make sense. And I don't care how much screaming, crying, boo-hooing that you do. And one last point. Until these people realize and agree and come to the conclusion of basic facts and reality, which is men are men and women are women, you can't transition. And then 2, if you're seriously trying to have these conversations, stop labeling people that disagree with you and have an opposite idea as hateful. Blossom did it. In this episode, she did it or he did it. Well, all of these rhetoric around trans women, trans people is hateful, right? She said propagandized. Oh my God. So until you stop labeling people that disagree with you as hateful, as bigots, as transphobes, we're never going to get anywhere because you automatically dismiss everything that we have to say because you automatically label us as hateful and transphobe. So why would you take us seriously, right? So why would we continue to have conversations with you when we know you don't take what we say seriously, you dismiss facts and truths and reality and science and research and statistics, and you automatically label us as hateful. So no. Matter of fact, us conservatives need to stop entertaining these people. I promise you guys, that's the only way that we're going to solve this, is we just stop entertaining this. Let them remain in their own little echo chamber. Let them argue with each other. And then eventually they'll figure out that they're going to need to create their own sports league because we're not going to allow you to come and compete with biological male or biological females. So if we just ignore them, don't acknowledge them, let them live their life. I'm not saying they shouldn't exist, but we're not debating you anymore when it comes down to stupid facts like this. We're not. We're just not going to do it. Just figure it out on your own. And if you want to compete, go create your own league. That's just the way. That's the only solution. That's the only solution that we have to fixing this is, hey, you guys go create your own category of sports and compete with each other. That's the only way that this is going to work. So anyway, let me know what you guys think about this. Let's talk about it in the comment section down below. Let me know what your opinions are. And of course, if you are brand new, consider hitting subscribe. And I'll see you on the next one. Peace.